who directed Atlantis, which is another one that we're talking about.
Very good segue. This is the first Danish feature film. And similarly to Traffic in Souls, it does have very good production value
Yeah.
and storytelling technique in it. However, I'm of the opinion that the story this film tells is garbage.
See, I kind of like this one. This one was probably actually the feature film that I liked the best out of all of them. This is about a boat a boat disaster.
Yeah.
This was based on a novel that came out a month before the Titanic disaster.
Coincidence or not?
It turns out that Gerhard Hauptmann, the writer of the novel, placed the iceberg in the way of the Titanic to sell more copies of Atlantis. I'm a Titanic truther.
This is such a specific and very obscure thing to have a conspiracy theory about.
I bet that there are some people who have conspiracy theories about the Titanic disaster, but probably not this one.
There are for sure many Titanic conspiracy theories. I don't know if this one has been broken yet.
So this movie was banned in Norway when it came out because they thought it was extremely tasteless. It's being based on something that I believe is kind of partially censored in the U.S. too, based on that. It's being based on something that came out before the Titanic disaster, and that was their defense, I think. But really, they knew what they were doing, making a movie about a ship disaster a year after Titanic.
They 100% did. Yeah, I mean it. Yeah, it is based on a book that was written before, and the filmmakers I think did say no, it's different, but it's I do think they knew what they were doing, to some degree. I mean, we have watched a couple films that either were directly about the Titanic disaster or sort of alluded to it.
Yeah.
And they all used some of them used an actual ship for part of it, but they all used miniature models for the actual sinking. This film, as far as I can tell, they just sunk a real ship.
Or they built a gigantic sinkable set that looked like a ship.
I think at the time it was probably easier just to buy an old ship and sink it.
Yeah, this looks like my jaw dropped when I saw that ship sinking. It looked. I mean, it's huge. It looked ridiculous.
Yeah.
Apparently, this was the most expensive movie that Nordisk, the production company, ever made, and it didn't make its money back, but it was still their most popular movie they ever made.
One quick thing to go back: the film was censored in the U.S., but not because of the Titanic connection, but because there is, I think, one shot of a sculpture of a topless woman. And Americans couldn't have any.
That's right.
Any
I messed that up in my
nude
head.
sculptures in their films, so that's what they censored.
Oh my!
But the plot around this ship disaster is the film tells the sweeping and heartwarming tale of a doctor who abandons his children so that he can travel and hit on women.
No, his children. He doesn't just abandon his children. He also abandons his mentally sick wife.
Yes, that too. Yeah, his wife is introduced at the beginning as having a sort of vague mental illness. So as is the custom of the time, she is sent away to a dark, unknown place. And the husband, the doctor, is so upset by this.
He's real bummed.
He's so bummed that he has to go out and just start hitting on people. So he immediately is just all right, I guess I just have to go out and start meeting some new gals. He meets a dancer who has lots of sort of admirers. She has her sort of entourage of simps around her.
Yeah. I wrote
Um,
Simps of the High Seas. Um, as a sequel to Simps of the Old West, but I feel like we can't have too many titles like that.
yeah, probably. Um, so the reason he gets on the ocean liner is she is going to New York, and so he wants to follow her to New York, and so he gets on the same boat. And there's all of these scenes of him and other people just like trying so hard to flirt with her on the
Yeah,
boat.
trying to get her attention. Like, hey, hey, look at me, look at me.
Yeah, and like just the most blatant, you know, bald attempts at like, look at me, I'm a man. Um,
Just pathetic simping all around.
and there's so many other people around this dancer that he has the hots for that he kind of either loses interest or just kind of gets
He
distracted.
gets discouraged, I think, because
Yeah.
he looks
So
sad.
he just starts flirting and smooching with other women on the ship that he happens upon. Um, um, and then so the ship sinks. They get rescued and make it to New York. And they sort of him and the dancer kind of get together in New York, but he pretty quickly loses interest because she is sort of still flirting with all these other dudes, and he's like, I can't have that. I abandoned my ill wife for you. So he's now just living in New York. He's like, hey, I still have a wife and children, but fuck them. And he meets a sculptor, a female sculptor, and falls ill, presumably with loneliness. He gets very ill.
Oh, he gets ill because he gets a letter from back home that his wife died. Like he gets a cable, and he's so, yeah, he puts him in a state of sadness, and he gets ill from the sadness.
But the sculptor that he meets sort of heals him back with presumably with smooches. And finally, after like a year of in film time, he finally goes back. He decides that this sculptor will be the new mother to his children.
Yeah.
She is worthy. And he finally goes home to his 3 kids that he has completely abandoned. And we get a sort of theoretical happy ending. But the whole time it's just like, this guy is such a dick.
Oh yeah, no, he's not a good dude. It's also weird because like the structurally, because the shipwreck happens. I mean, I guess this is more than a Titanic movie. It's really like it's really a kind of meandering drama that features a shipwreck.
Yeah.
And which is like 1 hour into the 2-hour long movie. And a lot of it is a lot of the idiosyncrasies of this movie, I think, are due to the writer of the novel who was involved in the making of the movie. For example, when the ship arrives in New York, they get to they go to a show of one of the other people who was on the boat, and it's kind of a vaudeville show of a guy with no arms who uses his feet like arms, like hands.
Yeah. Which is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
This guy has so much dexterity with his feet. No reason for him to be in the movie.
No reason for him to be in the movie, except that there are elements of this that were autobiographical, apparently, and the author insisted that a couple of his buddies be in the movie.
Oh my
god. And that foot guy was one of them.
I mean, this isn't like a brief, like, oh, there's like a brief scene where there's like this guy with no arms. He's like...
It's like 5 minutes.
He could be like a supporting character. Like, they dedicate so much time to this dude. So, like, he does his full act in the movie. They just show his whole thing.
Yeah. With, like, some close-ups and whatnot.
Yeah. And, like, it's cool, but it's also, like, why is this in the movie?
It's extremely irrelevant. I mean, apparently, August Blum and the other people making the movie were not super happy about all the demands that the author
Hmm.
made, um, because he mandated that they stick as closely as possible to what happened in the book. Um,
Mm.
so the movie is very accurate, but um, they made an alternate ending to the movie that is not the ending in the book, which is a sad ending for the Russian audience, uh, because
Those Russians, they love their sad
they
endings.
they I guess they had this info that they were like, Russians love sad endings, so we're gonna shoot an alternate sad ending where instead of falling in love with this new person, he deems her worthy to be the mother of his children and he heals. Instead, he just gets sicker and dies, and then she cries over him.
Yeah.
And and that's the
This
Russian
is not the
ending.
only movie. This is not the only movie to do that,
No.
though.
Yeah. Uh
There were other films from this. I can't name drop any of them, but there were other films from this era that also shot alternate endings for the Russian market that were just the sad ending. They were just like, this is in this one, everyone dies.
it's kind of amazing. But so along the lines of, trying to fight with the author of the book, the Russian sad ending could only, like, they mandated that it could only be shown in Siberia, like on the far end of Russia, because they thought that him living in Germany, like, he wouldn't really catch wind of this all the way on the other side of Russia.
Oh, really?
And so, like, I believe on the eastern, or on the western side of Russia, they played the European version.
Wow,
um,
that's crazy.
the author of the original book also was interested in eugenics and later became a Nazi. Um,
Oh,
and so
there's been a bunch of those. I guess just people from the 1910s tended to do that
yeah,
if they were
yeah.
living in Germany at the time.
Um, he and my guess is that they make a point of saying that the wife's uh, uh, mental illness is hereditary, and I'm thinking that that might have something to do with this guy's eugenicist beliefs. I don't know why I was
Oof.
all like, we're just saying bad things about this movie. I don't know why I liked it so much, but I was just entertained the whole time.
I
And I
mean,
watched,
it is. It's got great production value.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's a very showy film.
I
So
watched this right after I watched Traffic and Souls, and I was so mad at the, like, at bad editing in that movie, that this movie, like, actually having, like, decent moment to moment editing. They could have
mhm.
cut a lot of time out of the movie, but decent moment to moment
Yeah,
editing. It endeared me to it, or
yeah.
endeared it to
I
me.
mean, there's a lot of great shots in this.
Yeah.
There's a couple shots that are really shallow focus, which is something we haven't really seen much of.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even really think it's intended here as a sort of artistic flourish or anything. I think it's purely because the scene takes place in a dark cabin
Hmm.
that is very underlit, and so they needed to, when you open the aperture on a lens, the focus gets shallower, and so I think that was just a byproduct of that. But it makes those shots feel really kind of moody and
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I think there were some pretty casually showy shots in this movie, and if I think back to the White Slave Handle, it also had a couple of just randomly, very pleasingly composed shots in it.
Yeah, August Blum is definitely a good visual director, if nothing else.
Yeah,
And I think has a pretty good idea of storytelling, um, for the time period.
yeah. The
Um,
Dutch people are a good deal better than some other groups at this time. Uh,
um, one bit of fun trivia is later famous Hollywood director Michael Curtiz was the assistant director on this film
yeah,
back when he went by his Hungarian name, which I have not written down and probably cannot pronounce.
that was the same situation for me. Yeah, I didn't. um,
So I will refer to him as Michael Curtiz.
I didn't know him by name, but he went on to direct Casablanca and
Yeah.
White
A film you
Christmas.
may have heard of.
So that's cool.
Yeah.